equals that crisp morning air in Maplewood had a way of waking you up, like an ice-cold splash of water to your face. I stood on the cracked pavement outside my apartment, sipping on a steaming cup of bitter coffee, each sip reminding me of the sharpness of reality. The streets were just beginning to hum with life, the soft sounds of footsteps mingling with the distant chirps of birds. I was tired, not just from the late night I had spent buried in thoughts that kept me awake, but from the weight of my discontent. It recently felt as if a dark cloud hovered over me. I took another gulp of coffee and leaned against the chilly brick wall, wondering what people really saw when they looked at me. Did they sense the frustration boiling just below the surface? Did they recognize the hurt that twisted my gut like a knife? Or did they simply see Harrison Blake, the guy who used to be on top of the world? "Hey there, sleepyhead," my best friend Mike called out as he ambled down the street. His voice was a percussive contrast to the low hum of the morning breaking through the fog of my thoughts. He waved a hand, a beaming smile plastered across his freckled face. "You look like you wrestled a bear and lost." I snorted, looking up from my coffee. "And you look like you jumped out of bed without even brushing your hair." I tucked my brown curls behind my ear, suddenly aware of how haggard I must really look. "That is the charm of youth, my friend," he said with a mock-serious expression. "Besides, I can't help it if I look good without trying." I chuckled, though it felt more like a bark than genuine laughter. Mike always had that infectious energy, a vibrant contrast to the dullness that had settled like old dust over my life. "What's got you up so early?" he inquired, shoving his hands into the pockets of his worn jeans. "Something on your mind?" "Just thinking," I replied, taking another sip of coffee to shield myself from the deeper question. The truth was, I couldn't shake off the strange itch that had manifested into a longing for revenge. Not that I expected Mike to understand. "You know, you really should join me for my morning runs," he said, jabbing playfully at my side. "It helps clear the mind." "Yeah, I can't really see myself sprinting around the park like a gazelle," I replied, my expression souring at the thought of exercise. "Besides, I'm not sure my mind needs clearing, it's more like it's seething." Mike raised an inquisitive brow, his gaze fixed on me. "Seething? What have you got brewing in that big head of yours?" I hesitated, glancing sideways, wondering if I should let him in on the turmoil. After all, it was our friendship that carried years of trust built on shared secrets. I inhaled deeply, the cool air biting at my lungs. "It's just, some things never really come to a close, you know, like loose ends that keep fraying." "Such as?" he urged, his curiosity piqued. "You know, just," I paused, feeling a heaviness settle on my chest. Did I truly want to spill everything about my recent experiences and thoughts? "Just stuff at work," I finally said, settling on the safest explanation. Breaking into a fresh topic might buy me some time. "You wouldn't believe the latest nonsense at the office. Marcus is, I swear, trying to bump me out of my position." "Marcus, that smug prick, what's he up to now?" Mike spat out the words, constraining his disbelief. The mention of Marcus always stirred something deep within us both. "Trying to take credit for my project," I exclaimed, throwing my hands into the air. "I practically bled into that presentation and he's trying to wrap it in his shiny ego. What a jerk." "You need to teach him a lesson, man," Mike said, his voice conspiratorial, excitement sparking in his eyes. My heart quickened. I hadn't even considered that thought before he said it, but there was something intoxicating about the idea of confronting Marcus head-on, maybe even evening the score in ways I hadn't dared to imagine. "Right," I replied slowly, mulling over the flavor of revenge against the bitter brew of coffee. "I mean, it's tempting, really tempting. So, what are you planning?" He pressed, his energy now infectious. "You can't let him think he can just walk all over you." The wheels in my head began to turn. What if I orchestrated something that would show Marcus the cost of underestimating me? "There is this meeting tomorrow," I muttered, trying to sort through my racing thoughts. If I could expose his scheme, that could shift everything. "And that's why my buddy deserves some kind of payback," Mike said, grinning widely. "He needs to know that messing with Harrison Blake comes at a hefty price." I glanced down the street as shoppers shuffled along. My mind lingered at the thought of revenge, the visceral thrill sending chills down my spine. Part of me was excited by the idea, yet a darker side gnawed at my conscience. "You think so?" I asked, both hopeful and unsure. I don't want to stoop to his level. It's not about stooping, it's about standing your ground. You need to reclaim what's yours, Mike replied, as though reciting a battle cry. Besides, how long are you going to let him bully you? First, he encroaches, and soon enough your whole career could be at stake. What have I even become? I thought bitterly, reflecting on how cozy I had gotten with complacency. I mean, what will it take, Mike? What if it blows up in my face? Life's too short to constantly be worried about what could happen, he said, softening his tone. You just have to act and you'll handle the rest as you go. So simple, that advice, yet the heart of the matter swelled within it. I definitely felt the weight of my desire morphing into something larger, entwining with dark thoughts, but could I take that plunge? Could I risk it all to make an example of Marcus? More importantly, did I even want to? What if I ruined my reputation? I mumbled, my voice trailing off like a whisper in the breeze. Ruin it? No way. You're the golden boy, Harrison. Mike replied, his enthusiasm piercing through my doubts. You've earned your spot. Just because he's a scumbag doesn't mean he gets to take it from you. Show him you're not afraid. I stared at him, hoping he could read my thoughts, decipher the internal tussle between righteousness and revenge waging war inside me. All right, I said at last, almost daring to believe my own words, as if admitting it would make it real. What's the first step? Feeling a rush of adrenaline, I set my cup down and rolled my sleeves up. The meeting was tomorrow, and if I was going to snatch the reins back, I needed a plan. The layers of fear and discomfort still nestled in my stomach whispered against my boldness, but there was a strange thrill in defiance. We could go to the office early, set things up, Mike suggested, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Show Marcus that he messed with the wrong guy. How about we sneak in before everyone else arrives? I could almost see it unfold, the drama of it all, my blood thrumming in my veins. That might just work, I nodded slowly. The sun had risen higher, casting longer shadows on the pavement. We can figure out how to frame him, maybe leave a few breadcrumbs that lead back to him. As my excitement grew, I momentarily felt untouchable, as if nothing could stop me now. I was no longer just a victim in a fading system, but rather a force ready to reclaim my power. Yeah. We're going to catch him in the act, Mike cheered, his enthusiasm surging in the air around us, wrapping me in a bubble of temporary comfort. Harrison Blake, the hunter. It just has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? I couldn't resist a grin as the images of plotting and scheming illuminated the darkness that had been following me around. Revenge had a way of making heroes out of ordinary people, and for the first time in ages, I felt alive again. The bitterness of my coffee aligned with the bitterness of my thoughts, forming a toxic yet electrifying cocktail of intent. The game was on, and I was ready to dive headfirst into the wild chaos that would surge forth. The thought of ruining Marcus, of hunting him down in this cruel world of opportunism and deceit, felt almost deliciously exquisite. The plan was forming in the back of my mind, each step clicking into place, and despite my worries, I found comfort in the choice that lay ahead. Regardless of the consequences, I was stepping onto a path that was mine and mine alone. It was a dark and cold morning in Maplewood, the kind that made you want to stay curled up in bed, hidden beneath layers of blankets. Instead, I found myself standing in front of the cracked mirror of my tiny bathroom, staring at the reflection of a man I hardly recognized. My hair was a wild mess, tousled and rebellious as if it had its own agenda. I was still wearing the wrinkled shirt from the night before, and the dark circles under my eyes hinted at too many sleepless nights consumed by anger and betrayal. As I splashed cold water on my face, a shiver coursed through me, but it was more than just the temperature. It was the reminder of what had been taken from me and how I was determined to make things right. The sun had barely risen, casting a grayish light through my window, and with it came the memories of last weekend when everything had fallen apart. I paced around my cramped flat, my mind racing uncontrollably as I recollected the events that led me here. How could she do this to me? I muttered to myself, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. The image of Vanessa with Mark flooded my mind, the way they laughed together, the way they looked at each other with something I thought she only had for me. I clenched my fists, my nails dug into my palms, but the physical pain was almost welcome, a distraction from the emotional turmoil that left me exhausted. I glanced out the window and saw people bustling about, their lives continuing as if nothing had happened. It only made me feel more isolated. I had been the good boyfriend, the one who believed in love and honesty, and yet here I was, betrayed by the one person I trusted the most. The anger ignited again in my chest like a flame needing no kindling, and I swore to myself that this was not the end. No, it was just the beginning of their downfall. I grabbed my phone off the coffee table, my fingers trembling slightly as I unlocked it and pulled up the group chat with my friends. "Hey, do you guys want to meet up later?" I typed, my heart racing as I envisioned their reactions. I needed to talk. I needed to plot. I needed to unleash the chaos that had been building inside me. The reply came faster than I expected. "Yeah, sure. What did you have in mind?" replied Jamie, the joker of our group but also the first one to sense when something was off. There was a part of me that wanted to keep everything bottled up, to pretend I was fine, but the desire for revenge was overwhelming. I took a deep breath. "I need to talk about Vanessa," I typed, my thumbs hovering above the screen, the weight of my words heavy in the air. I hit send, my heart pounding like a drum before a decisive battle. A response came almost instantly. "Oh no, what did she do this time?" I rolled my eyes, knowing that Jamie always jumped straight to conclusions without waiting for the full story. "You know how we've been around each other for years. Well, I caught her with Mark in our favorite spot." There was a brief pause before the floodgates opened. "Are you serious?" "I knew she wasn't good for you, man," Jamie replied, lighter than I had anticipated. "What's the plan? You need to let it out." The replies began to pour in from the others, fueling the desperation I felt inside. I could see the emojis, the sympathy, but all I felt was the keen edge of betrayal pressing down on me. "I plan to make them pay," I typed, my fingers trembling with excitement. "They think they can just walk away from what they did." "Wait, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Jamie typed, the urgency in his reply apparent even through the text. I could picture him sitting in his room, a grin forming as he realized that this had escalated beyond just a simple breakup. "Maybe," I typed back, smirking slightly at the possibilities swirling in my mind. "I have some ideas," I added, the voice of righteousness mingling with the dark urge within me. "'Kay, I'm in. Let's meet up and strategize," he replied, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. The moment had come to gather my allies in this war. Within an hour, I was sitting in a booth at the local diner, the Maple Leaf, a popular spot that smelled of freshly baked pastries and brewed coffee. The click-clack of silverware and the soft murmur of conversation surrounded me, creating an atmosphere that felt both cozy and uncomfortable. I fidgeted with my napkin, my mind churning with thoughts of revenge while trying to maintain a calm exterior. Not long after, Jamie burst through the door. He was hard to miss, his thick golden hair bouncing with each step as he made his way toward me. He slid into the booth, grinning widely. "Dude, this is some heavy stuff, so what is your plan?" I leaned in closer, the air between us thick with anticipation. "I want to make her think I can't live without her for a little while," I explained, rehearsing my lines like a twisted play. "Let her see me without her, but not in pain. I want her to realize the mistake she made." "Good idea," Jamie nodded, eyes wide. He was eager to get in on the action. "So how do you begin with that? Like, do you start dating again, make her jealous?" "Yes," I said, my heartbeat increasing with the thrill of plotting our revenge. "But it has to be someone she knows, someone familiar. We need to make a real impact." "Who do you have in mind?" he asked, cocking an eyebrow, the wheels turning in his mind. I didn't take long to answer. "Lucy," I whispered, the name hanging heavy in the air. Lucy was a girl from our high school, someone Vanessa knew well. She was fun, carefree, and she had no idea of the brewing storm I was about to create. "She is pretty and smart, and best of all, she is not tied down to anyone right now." "Lucy. Wow, that could actually work," Jamie chuckled, scratching his head as he processed the idea. "What if she gets wind of this, though?" "Let her. That is the point," I responded firmly. "Imagine how it would feel for Vanessa to see me with someone like Lucy." The contrast would be staggering. The more I spoke, the more confident I became, each word fueling my resolve. "You really think this could work?" Jamie asked, but I could see the gears turning in his mind as the rogue spirit of rebellion began to take shape. "It has to," I said sharply, conviction punctuating my statement. "I have to give her a taste of the heartbreak she served me, serve it cold without any remorse. They say revenge comes with a price, but each minute of plotting felt less like a betrayal and more like a sweet release from the shackles she had put me in. Perhaps in my heart, I knew it was wrong, but in that moment, all I could feel was a terrifying exhilaration. "I think we can get her on board," Jamie replied, leaning back with a calculated grin. "She could be the perfect accomplice. What's next?" I knew there would be risks involved, but risk was part of the thrill. "I will call her later, maybe tonight. But I want to establish the groundwork first, you know. I need to give off an air of confidence. I need to seem like I have moved on." As we continued to discuss the strategy, the plan became clearer, more refined. I could hear the laughter and the chatter of people around us, but it all was like background noise as I immersed myself deeper into the web of deceit I was constructing. Each time I pictured Vanessa's shocked face, I felt a rush of adrenaline that made my heart thud in my chest. After what felt like hours, our conversation shifted from plotting revenge to old memories, the laughter of past times washing over me like a soothing balm. Yet, despite the laughter, the satisfaction of planning began sinking into an undeniable guilt that clawed at the edges of my conscience. Do I really want to do this? I thought, but the question quickly vanished as I remembered her smile, the way she had made me feel like I was the only one who mattered. "Hey man, you still with us?" Jamie snapped me back from my spiraling thoughts, and I nodded, the fury bubbling back to the surface, reigniting the fire in my belly. "Yeah, I am. We have to gather a few others, maybe get Lucy's friends involved for good measure," I said, my voice low and dangerous, but underneath that, a sense of excitement began to blossom. "Let's do this," Jamie said, determination etched across his face. We finally left the maple leaf, the crisp air hitting me like a splash of cold water, and as I walked out, a sense of purpose filled my chest. With every step I took, I could already picture it all laid out before me. The plan, the execution, and the faces of those who had wronged me, their innocence ripped away like paper in a storm. This was no longer just about me or Vanessa. It was about standing tall against all that betrayal. As we walked away from the diner, a devilish grin cut across my face, and I felt like I was stepping into the role of a puppet master, ready to pull the strings of a chaos that would resonate through every corner of Maplewood. Little did they know, I was just getting started. The muted colors of the late afternoon sky settled over Maplewood as I leaned against the rough stone wall of a small alley, hidden from the world that had betrayed me. I could hear the echoes of laughter drifting through the streets, distant sounds of normalcy, as if nothing terrible had ever happened. Yet my heart thundered in my chest, and a fire of determination burned bright within me. I had spent the last week meticulously planning my revenge against Samuel Reed, the man who had ruined everything I held dear. The air felt thick with tension as I checked my watch, counting down the minutes until my former best friend would stumble into my trap. My pulse quickened when I spotted him at the end of the alley, moving casually, phone glued to his ear as he laughed. How could anyone laugh after the mess he made? I swallowed down a wave of nausea as anger churned in my stomach. There was Samuel, completely unaware of what was coming, unaware of how the consequences of his betrayal would unfold. He turned, his face glowing in the dim twilight, absolutely carefree. I had to remind myself that the boy I had once called my closest friend was nothing more than a stranger now, a lion in sheep's clothing, and it was time for the wolf to strike. "Can you believe it, mate?" Samuel's voice echoed around me, a mocking reminder of our lost friendship. "I thought she was with you forever, but look at how easily she left you for me." Pure venom dripped from his words. I clenched my fists, feeling the rough stone of the wall dig against my palm, trying to ground myself in the moment. "Should have known better, right?" he chuckled, the sound twisted and sharp. "You always were the sensitive one. It's part of what led me to her in the first place." Each word he spoke was like a dagger twisting deeper into the gash in my heart. Just then, a burst of furious motivation surged through me. I remembered Julia, her laughter, her dreams, and how beautifully we had intertwined our lives. I wouldn't let Samuel skate by, ruining lives with his casual betrayal. My breath steadied, and I took a moment, letting the fire of revenge fuel every thought that crossed my mind. I had been setting the pieces in place, And finally, it was just about time for my plan to unfold. Do you remember what we used to dream about, Samuel? I stepped out from behind the wall, my voice low and calm, an eerie contrast to the chaos boiling inside me. There was power in surprising him. He had never been one to expect my strength. His laughter faded, confusion prickling his features. "Harrison, is that you?" He dropped his phone and it landed with a thud on the cobblestones. "What are you doing here?" "Reminiscing," I replied, forcing a smile. My heart raced, every second stretching into eternity as I watched him for any signs of fear, any crack in his perfect facade. I was thinking about our dreams. I think they are still around, lingering in the corners of this town. "What are you talking about?" He squinted at me, and I could see the gears in his head turning. He had always been a smart one, but what I had put together would dismantle everything he thought he knew. "I mean it, Samuel," I pressed, stepping closer, feeling my heart quicken with each move I made. "All those late-night conversations about what our futures would look like, the plans we had. We talked about building a life together, and look at where we are now. You took everything I built with Julia and tossed it aside as if it were worthless." He shifted his weight, the discomfort palpable on his face, just the reaction I wanted. My own feelings of betrayal bubbled up and I pushed forward. "Betrayal seems so easy for you, doesn't it?" I asked, circling him like a vulture waiting to feast. "It was almost effortless how you slid right in there. Did you even care about us, or was it just about getting what you wanted?" He stumbled over his words, trying to regain control. "I didn't mean for it to go like this, Harrison. Julia wanted me. We connected and I thought we were open about our feelings." "Open about your feelings? You call stealing my girlfriend open?" I demanded, unable to suppress the unhinged laughter bubbling within me. It quickly escaped, harsh and cold. "You and Julia need to straighten your story out. This wasn't exactly a fairy tale ending for me, was it?" Frustration surged through me, and a desperate need to strike while the iron was hot burned in my chest. "I'm sorry." His voice rose, and I could see frustration mingling with guilt in his eyes. "It was an accident. I didn't want to hurt you." "An accident." I echoed his words, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "An accident is when you spill a drink. This wasn't an accident. You chose to betray me. You chose to lie. You chose to take what belonged to me." Anger poured out of me, pouring like molten lava. "How does it feel, Samuel, knowing you have reached the point of real regret, facing the consequences finally?" "I didn't think it would matter," he admitted, his panic rising. "I thought it was just an infatuation. I didn't think you would care as much as you do." Each word dripped from his lips like poison. "But I did care, Samuel. I cared a lot," I yelled, my voice echoing down the alley. "You think it was easy to toss aside everything we shared as boys?" My desire for revenge surged forward, and the entire plan unfolded in my mind, tantalizing and vivid, seducing me with its promise of satisfaction. "You may have won this round, Samuel, but the game is not over yet." Seeing regret flood his features brought me a twisted sense of joy, but it was not enough. I stepped closer, invading his space, forcing him to confront his choices. "I have a little surprise for you, something to make you see just how deep the knife of betrayal cuts." A flash of fear crossed his face, and it made me feel heavy with exhilaration. "What are you talking about?" he asked. The confidence he often radiated felt fragile now, and I reveled in that shift. "I have some fun planned for you," I said, relishing each word like a drug. "I want you to understand the pain you have caused. You may think you are winning, but just wait and see what I have in store." "What do you mean?" His voice trembled at the edge, doubt creeping in. "You wouldn't do anything crazy, right? We're still friends deep down." "Friends," I scoffed, the word itself tasting like acid. "You think you can still hold on to our past when you've butchered it? You are delusional. You crossed a line, Samuel, and you will pay for it. That much I can promise you." Just as I felt satisfaction welling within me at his terror, I pulled out a small device from my pocket. The brass ring glinted in the dim light, reflecting my inner darkness back at me. "You see this? It's a series of recordings. Everything you said about Julia is captured within those little files. You thought no one would know, but my plan has been set for a long time. You don't get to turn your back on me without grease on your hands." "No." His denial rang out through the alley, a thin thread of desperation weaving into his voice. "You wouldn't I?" I interrupted him, inching the device closer. You think I am just going to sit back and listen to your lies and deceit. No, you have to feel that breath of guilt. Every time you see her, remember, she knows exactly what you said about her behind closed doors. Panic erupted in Samuel's eyes, and in that moment I saw the full scope of his regrets, clear as the sky above us. Every laugh we had shared, every late-night conversation, felt like shady memories in the dry autumn air as he stepped back, losing his bravado. "You're sick, Harrison," he shrieked, his voice suddenly breaking. "You think this will solve anything?" "No," I said, my words cold and unyielding. "It won't, but it will bring you the justice you deserve. Your precious reputation is on the line. Revelation is coming. You're going to feel every ounce of pain you have caused." "Please, no," he begged, his voice barely a whisper now. "I'll do anything, just don't." I could taste the blood rushing through my veins, the intoxicating mix of fear, regret, and despair, a beautiful concoction I had been fueled by. "You should have thought about that before betraying me, Samuel," I replied, a smirk creeping onto my face. "This is just the beginning. You will learn to appreciate the sorrow you brought upon us." "Stop," he pleaded, his voice cracking. I knew I had struck the heart of his fear, and it felt good. There was power in my control, watching him squirm like a fish caught on land, gasping for air. "You brought this on yourself." I spoke softly now, a whisper almost lost in the twilight. "Do not seek out redemption from me, Samuel." I turned to walk away, leaving him to grapple with the devastation of his own making, but not without dropping a final bombshell. "And just so you know, it won't only be you receiving my little surprise. I plan to reel Julia in too." "No." His voice was a desperate shout, but I was already stepping away from him, my heart surging with satisfaction. The shadows of Maplewood began to envelop me as I moved towards the distance, leaving him lost in despair, serving as a delightful reminder of my aching wounds. I deserved this small victory, but I couldn't revel in it just yet. I had a long way to go before my revenge was complete. I could taste it, and with every step, the thrill of retribution burned ever bright in my chest, urging me on into the night. The darkness, my only ally in this game of pain, the thick autumn air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves as I made my way through the quiet town of Maplewood. My heart pounded, echoing in my ears like a relentless drum, matching my rising fury. The sky above was a dull, slate gray, threatening rain at any moment, but I paid it no mind. I had made a decision, a commitment to the path I had chosen, and I was not turning back now. My mind drifted, replaying the betrayal that had stung me like a venomous snake. Just days ago, I had fallen into a dark pit of despair when I learned that my closest friend, Charlie, had not only lied to me but had helped orchestrate my downfall in front of our entire circle. The coffee shop, usually a place of laughter and comfort, had become the stage for my humiliation, the bitter aftertaste of betrayal lingering long after I had walked away that day. I chuckled darkly at the thought. How ironic that it had been his smug face, so confident and self-assured, that first pushed me off the edge of anger and into the tumultuous sea of revenge. I could still hear his laughter ringing in my ears, the way he had thrown my failures in my face, as if the world needed another reason to scoff at me. "You thought you could make it without me, Harrison," his voice echoed tauntingly. "You're nothing without me." My hands tightened into fists at my sides, fingernails digging into my palms as I marched down the damp streets. I would show him. I would show them all. The dim light from the antique street lamps glimmered like ghostly beacons, guiding me toward my destination, the old warehouse on the edge of town, a place steeped in memories of friendships forged and dreams envisioned. As I reached the building's rusty metal door, I hesitated for just a moment. Doubt crept in, the cold fingers of uncertainty grazing my skin, but I shrugged it off. I couldn't let fear win. I pushed the door open, the creak of the rusted hinges sounding like the cries of old ghosts welcoming me back. The interior was spacious, with dust motes dancing in the slanted rays of light coming through the cracked windows. I had spent countless hours here with Charlie, dreaming about our future, the business we were going to start, the lives we were going to change. Now, it felt more like a tomb, holding the artifacts of my past. "Harrison." A voice broke through my brooding thoughts, and I turned to see Jamie standing at the far end of the warehouse. Dressed in his usual casual clothes, his shaggy hair falling into his eyes just like it always did, he looked slightly out of breath as he made his way toward me. I was wondering when you would finally show up. There was an unspoken concern in his voice, and I couldn't resist a small, bitter smile. Sorry to keep you waiting. Everything okay? You've been acting a little strange lately. I let out a low chuckle, almost derisive. Strange? No, Jamie, I'm not strange. I'm just about to take control of my own life. Jamie's brow furrowed as he crossed his arms over his chest. What do you mean by that? There it was. That familiar concern from my remaining friend. It made sense, given that Jamie was one of the few who hadn't turned his back on me in the last few chaotic days. Charlie, I replied tersely, barely allowing the name to slip from my lips. I can't believe you still are hanging around him. What do you mean? Jamie pressed, tilting his head slightly. He's a part of our circle, a part of our plans, you know that. I could sense the incredulity in his stance and the hesitation in his voice, but I would not back down. James, do you realize that he has sabotaged everything we worked for? My chest tightened as the memory of Charlie's betrayals clouded my thoughts once more. He talked behind my back, convinced our investors that I couldn't do it alone, and I haven't had the chance to prove him wrong. Jamie blinked, a silence hanging between us as he processed my anguish. You're angry, he finally said carefully, his voice low, almost soothing. You're hurt, but revenge isn't the answer. I let out a harsh laugh, the sound echoing against the warehouse walls. You don't understand. He needs to know what it feels like to lose everything. Jamie stepped closer, earnestness etched on his face. And what if you lose yourself in the process? He asked. You're not like him, Harrison. You don't want to be that guy. And what if I do? I shot back, anger spilling over like a boiling pot of water. What if I want to be the person who stands up and takes back what is rightfully mine? You're talking about revenge. This isn't some movie, man. You're playing a dangerous game as it is, Jamie replied, his voice tense. And I care about you. I don't want to see you go down that path. I softened for a brief moment, my determination faltering at the sincerity in his eyes. You think I enjoy this? Do you think I wanted Charlie to turn his back on me? I thought we were friends. The sound of my voice had taken on a quaver, revealing the vulnerability I had kept so tightly contained. Jamie placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me for just a moment. Then prove him wrong. Show him you don't need him. Don't stoop to his level. Rise above it, he urged me softly, and for just an instant I wanted to believe him. But I was weary of pretending, weary of being the good guy while he laughed his way to the top. You don't understand, James. Charlie is the catalyst for my pain, and I refuse to let it go. You're going to ruin everything, he warned, taking a step back. The gap between us felt monumental, the distance of our diverging paths stretching like the endless road before me. If you want to fight fire with fire, you will only end up burned. Maybe I need that burn to wake up, I challenged. For too long I have been content to let others dictate my life. Charlie can't take the last shred of dignity from me. I refuse to let him win. I turned away from Jamie, walking deeper into the warehouse, feeling the tension of his gaze boring into my back. The walls felt like they were closing in, memories of laughter haunting every shadow. My heart pounded furiously in my chest as I recalled how many times we had envisioned this place as the birthplace of our dreams. And now, it was nothing more than the graveyard of my ambitions, each discarded possibility piled atop another like rusted machinery waiting to be scrapped. There is something else at play here, Harrison. It's not just revenge you're after, Jamie's voice followed, tinged with desperation. It's the feeling of being important, being needed. I turned back to him, annoyance flaring up again. What do you know about what I want? I know you, he replied, and his gaze softened with concern. I can see the hurt beneath your anger, and it terrifies me. You might find a way to hurt Charlie, but in the end, you're the one who will truly suffer. And if suffering is the price to pay, I shot back, my voice barely concealing the conflict brewing internally, then I am willing to pay it. You're not alone anymore, he said, lowering his tone to something almost compassionate. I'll stand by you. I won't let you go down this path. You don't get to make that choice for me, I snapped, and as soon as the words left my lips, guilt swept over me. Jamie had always stood by my side, a loyalty unyielding and pure, attributes I admired. I just want you to see the truth, he murmured quietly. The truth, I echoed, incredulity lacing my words. You mean the truth of Charlie's betrayal. The truth that I am nothing without taking back my power. The truth that revenge can consume you, Harrison, Jamie said, his voice barely above a whisper. I could feel the intensity of his stare boring into me, unwavering in the face of my storm. And at that moment a small part of me faltered, grappling with the looming shadows of doubt. Harrison. My name fell softly from his lips, and I felt a pang of nostalgia for all the years we shared. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps I was making a mistake. Yet the fire inside me had been kindled into a blazing inferno. I have to do this, Jamie. I can't let him win. The resolve in my tone surprised even me, reflecting the wild whirlpool of emotions that churned deep within. You're not thinking clearly, he warned, stepping forward again. This will only drag you further into darkness. A dark path is better than one lined with deception, I shot back, my fists balling tighter. I will face whatever consequences that come my way. A heavy silence fell between us, the unspoken words hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. Jamie's expression revealed a mix of sorrow and frustration. Then I can't help you, Harrison. If you choose to go down this road, you're on your own, but know that I'll always be here waiting for you to come back. You think I am going to back down, I said defiantly. I never said that. I'm merely stating that you have a choice, Harrison. You can be a better person than this. Jamie turned to leave, and I felt the weight of his disappointment settle heavily on my shoulders. What do you think will happen? He asked one last time, looking over his shoulder. When you put your plan into motion, when you take that step, do you really believe it will make you feel better? I won't know until I try, I replied, ensuring my voice held steady. You should try to understand that. With that, he walked away, leaving me in the dimness of the warehouse, enveloped by haunting echoes of the past. Alone again, I felt the isolation wrap around me like a familiar coat. The world outside faded into silence, my heart and mind tangled in an intense chaos of emotions no one would understand. I looked around, at the peeling walls, the shadows longer than my memories, and knew that soon Charlie would regret crossing me. Revenge flickered in my chest like a small flame, steady and insistent, urging me to let it grow. I needed to claim what was mine, regardless of the cost. As I stood in the fading light, a thought struck me with startling clarity. I would face Charlie on my terms. When the moment came, I would catch him off guard, surprise him like he had surprised me. I would take back my power, and maybe in the process I'd find myself again. Hidden away in the corners of my mind, the plan began to take shape, and the exhausted hope I had stifled for so long flickered back to life. This time, it would not be extinguished easily. My fate was no longer in Charlie's hands. I would forge my own path, no matter how bittersweet the outcome might be.